Good afternoon, welcome. I'm excited to talk to you about what's mostly an education project, but also a community connection, ecology, and food project that's been going on in Western Oklahoma in the US. And in the background, those are walnut trees there. My current subtitle is A Convergence of Great Ideas, Why It Didn't Work and Why You Should Do It. And I will end up spending most of the time on the great ideas because that's the interesting part, why it didn't work, less so, but also because I physically left my job and my house of 13 years with 4 people's worth of stuff and moved this week, and I did not apparently take access to all of my images. So that's where, like, I was hoping to have the little logos to go there. The great idea that this is a convergence of great ideas is that I have students in Weatherford, Oklahoma, which is a town of 10,000 people, mapping invasive trees, which they've been doing for a long time, and mapping food plants, which is a new take on this, developing posters and projects where they're sharing information about what could be gained by replacing these invasive trees with food plants, but also sharing the maps with the local food banks and the service organizations of town to have these classes that I'm mapping with our spring Northern Hemisphere spring classes, to have people in the fall go out and collect the pecans that are falling in the streets. And then use this project as part of a national network of biology professors who are trying to integrate ethics and responsible conduct of research training into their cures. And there's more on that and the definition of these acronyms momentarily. So why this was a great idea from the student side is mostly I'm a plant ecologist. I want to get my students outside and doing ecology. I'm at a primarily teaching institution. Most of the students who are in these classes are wanting to go into healthcare fields, but I want to convince them that there's a lot to be gained by being outside. And I've been doing that in Weatherford, Oklahoma since 2011. We've been monitoring the trees of heaven, which I will go ahead and call invasive, which intentionally planted in Weatherford, Oklahoma at some point. They didn't get there on their own, but are growing even in the cracks in the sidewalks. This is the post office downtown. There's a tree of heaven growing there. It was a great thing for me to do with students because they can identify the trees of heaven in all seasons, so I could get students out, and they suddenly start noticing that plants are around them, and that the ecology is not just something for the natural area fields, whatever that may be defined as, but that there is ecology right around them. And that we could call this a curriculum-based undergraduate research and experience, a cure if we wanted to, and that we could follow it up with students actually presenting posters and presentations, which I have had my students as part of class do for the last 13 years. And this year's poster is going to be virtually presented tomorrow. And my other group of students doing work on Mars soil, Rachel Ulig, will be talking about it tomorrow as well. But then fall of 2021, I walk to campus, I see the trees of heaven, but I also see the food trees. And there was literally food falling into the streets from the alleys in the mile between my house and campus. And I'm like, why do we not map this instead of these invasive plants? And so I started mapping the food trees. And then I got talked into being part of what I just call the mini acronyms that one of my colleagues applied to be part of the ethics network for course-based opportunities in undergraduate research, which while we were at the conference funded by these people, being fellows of these people last year, neither of us could remember what the actual acronyms stood for. It is based out of the University of Texas, El Paso, but a great group, which is getting faculty members to explicitly integrate responsible conduct of research and ethics into their biology undergraduate research experiences, not just for those students who are NIH funded for their summer research, but that all students need this. And they started this, or my involvement with this fellowship was actually at the SABRE conference last year, the Society for the Advancement of Biological Education Research, and at which I learned that I'm an educator and a scientist and a biologist, but I am not a biology education researcher. And these folks are scary in a new and exciting way, but that most of us actually teaching all of the time don't really, we do define our objectives. I will say we do that. And we match our assessments to our objectives. But we don't try to get the IRB approval to talk about what the students did. And these folks do. And because I was part of it, I also did. I wrote an IRB. And while I was at the conference, I also got COVID. And the colleague who talked me into going quit, so that I decided that I was not necessarily going to stay at my current job. Yes, we had, because of this project, we had official what we are doing. My take we had to pick like one area we were going to focus on for this project. And my big project was that students are bad at maps. And that I was having students map every year, but the data is inconsistent even though they're using these same data sheets, entering it into the same database, they're tracking different things slightly, and that makes collaboration through time difficult. And what we decided to do for that was I was going to have this year's terrestrial ecology class test the old protocols, figure out why they didn't work, and design and retest new protocols. And the broader topic we were going to get from this was the idea of absence data versus absent data. That I cannot get the students to write down the addresses that they looked at that did not have these trees, even though they looked at these houses, and they just were not recording absence data. and we were discussed at length in the end, the difference between zeros and blanks, not there versus not writing something down. Absence data is really useful. Absent data is a problem. And so because I was part of this educational researcher folks, we did it like everything properly. We had, I was going to have them, one thing that we really didn't do was measure, like actually quantify how much different our food map model would be if we had missed X many houses and those things, but we did all the rest. And then we did not officially measure our ideas about both food insecurity. I had an ethics component of that. And also that, you know, even homeowners are making land management decisions that have ethical consequences. So these were our goals. It's amusing to me that we couldn't even agree on the acronym for responsible ethical conduct of research or ethical responsible conduct of research. And whether it's RECR, or RECR, the people in the network use all of them. I am not a RECR person, but I could be convinced if you are. And our conversations about this in class were fabulous. I had never explicitly talked about this. This was just one example. I use mini whiteboards, highly recommend having students write on mini whiteboards for sharing things. This is one student's ideas of what ethical issues and responsible conduct research issues were relevant. Others talked about like what happens if we publish the maps, but we're not going to publish the maps. And you know, but could we, should we, you know, are people gonna like suddenly descend on your yard to get your pecans if this data is available? And it's like, well, it seems unlikely, but yeah, we should be talking about it. Someone asked who's responsible if we take food to the food bank and it's not good. And yeah, there's lots of issues that hadn't been discussed before. It didn't work partially circumstantially. One of these is my typical class of 16 students that every year from 2022 and prior I had. And the other is my current class of 8 students. So all of our, we're gonna do these in 4 groups of 4 and test each other's things. Didn't happen. And we also, after COVID last summer, after this conference, I decided I wanted to live someplace else and bought a house in Kansas. So I'm not going back. I've been teaching for more than 17 years full-time and made a complete rookie mistake of I actually took things out of my curriculum to put this in, but I didn't pay attention to the timing. I put it in February when you couldn't identify the plants. And this peach tree bloomed over spring break, and then it was pretty much unidentifiable before and after. And then the perennial mistake of why it didn't work. This is straight from the report to the ENCOUR group. They chose the color scheme, I didn't. But I thought we could do things in like 1 lab, and no, it took 3 labs, and you know, just like what actually happens, the perennial mistakes. But you should do similar things, anyway, because students really do respond well to responsible conduct of research training. They liked talking about the issues regarding this. And this ethics network exists. There's a whole group of people who have published and share ideas of how to integrate this into yours. It's fun. actually. Our one activity that really worked well was I would show something and then I would have them check if it changed their opinion line by line. And it was first just like university maintains their grounds, but the lawn is watered, fertilized, and maintained with combustion engine tools. But they're using pre-emergent herbicides, but it's a drought, but it's this, and goes back and forth all the way. But they said it works, and there's food to be harvested. So thanks to my hundreds of students, the ENCOUR people who supported us, and the community of Weatherford and the peoples who have lived and continue to live there. Thank you.